Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into some really fascinating material you've shared with us.
Hmm.
It all tracks this profound, almost unbelievable shift in how global wealth is being created.
Right.
Our sources suggest that the old rules, the old timeline for success, had just been completely thrown out.
Completely.
And what's replacing it is something so fast, so concentrated, that people are starting to label it Gilded Age 2.0.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to get into that speed. It's all about the speed and, frankly, the lack of friction in the system now. We need to analyze what's actually driving this warp speed acceleration of value, and also why, despite these massive numbers, there's this deep current of skepticism running through all the source material.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the anecdote that really sets the tone for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Your source describes a scenario.
Mm.
Investors walk into a meeting, they look across the table, and they see what one person described as, and I'm quoting here, a bunch of kids.
A bunch of kids, yeah.
But those kids, in their hoodies, they're the Merkur team. They're led by a 22-year-old founder. And their company is already carrying a $10 billion valuation.
That is just the perfect place to start because it crystallizes the whole issue right away. For decades, for as long as we can remember, accumulating wealth was a marathon.
A long, hard slog.
Exactly. If you wanted to build a company worth $10 billion, you needed, multiple rounds, years of scaling. You had to survive a few market cycles.
And the sources are really clear on this. And what we're seeing now is just fundamentally a sprint, a leap to generational wealth that's so quick. It doesn't just shorten the timeline. It feels like it redefines it completely.
It absolutely redefines it. And that's why the traditional metric, the speed to billionaire metric, is, well, it's broken. When we think of that kind of growth, we think of someone like Elon Musk, right?
Sure.
Building PayPal, then moving on to these massive, complex, capital-intensive businesses, Tesla, SpaceX.
Right, like decades.
A decades-long effort. It was cumulative. But the material we have now suggests the new metric is it's measured in quarters. Maybe even months, not decades.
So we need to unpack how this is even physically possible. Can't just be a good idea, right? Something systemic must have changed.
And that's where we need to look past the hype. So if Merkur, which is an AI-driven talent platform, is valued at $10 billion, it's not just because they hired a few good engineers. It's a paradigm shift in the underlying tech infrastructure.
Okay, so help our listener out here. When we talk about these three companies that are mentioned, Merkur, Perplexity, and Cursor, what specific part of the AI world are they dominating that allows for this kind of speed?
Great question, because the function explains the valuation. So Perplexity, valued at, what, $20 billion?
$20 billion.
It's essentially an AI-first conversational search engine. So they're directly challenging, the giants of traditional search by offering summarized, synthesized answers, and they do it by leveraging these huge foundational models.
Okay, and Cursor?
Cursor is valued even higher, at $27 billion. It's an AI coding assistant.
So it makes developers faster?
Exponentially faster. So we're not talking about building new cars or, laying down fiber optic cable.
Right. This isn't old school industrial work.
No. We're talking about building software on top of massive pre-existing digital infrastructure. And that, right there, seems to be the critical difference from the old marathon.
So what are the key drivers then?
Well, the sources outline two main technical drivers for this sprint. First, it's the rise of these powerful, accessible, open-source AI foundational models.
Meaning you don't have to build the brain from scratch.
Exactly. Founders no longer need to spend 5 years and, hundreds of millions of dollars building the core intelligence. They can just download it, fine-tune it, and get going.
And the second driver?
Ubiquitous, scalable cloud infrastructure. You don't need to buy servers anymore. You don't need racks. You can launch a global application overnight with almost no capital expense.
Which just dramatically lowers the barrier to entry. And it compresses that timeline from idea to global scale.
Absolutely. So when you see Merkur at 10 billion, Perplexity at 20, Cursor at 27, these aren't just, one-off success stories.
Or proof of a trend.
They're proof of a new systemic environment where scale is almost immediate.
So let's think about what this means for you, if you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, if you were, say, a procurement executive at a big bank or logistics firm, your whole process for analyzing competitors, adopting new tech, that worked on a timescale of years.
You had time. You could do pilot projects, slow reviews, sign multi-year vendor contracts.
And now, that entire process is basically rendered obsolete.
It is. Market dominance can be established so quickly that these established players, they have to operate with the urgency of a venture capitalist now.
The risk of being disrupted is it's incredibly high.
Because the speed of disruption is astronomical. I mean, an incumbent company trying to keep its market share has to develop a competing product or acquire a startup. In the same 6 to 12 months, it takes one of these young companies to reach unicorn status.
So the old guard, the incumbents, they're fighting a battle they weren't designed to win. Their structure, their timelines, it's all built for the marathon, not the sprint. It just forces a terrifying pace on entire industries.
And that shift from planning in 3-year cycles to executing in 3-month sprints, that's the real-world consequence of these multi-billion-dollar valuations just appearing overnight.
But if the market is moving this fast, doesn't that just inherently breed caution? I mean, we've seen this movie before, haven't we?
We have.
Let's transition to that, to the crucial skepticism that's really embedded in the material.
Yes, and that skepticism is like the intellectual insurance policy the sources provide. We have to remember that while this immense, generational wealth is being created, the founders themselves, like the ones from Harvey, they're quoted as saying, yeah, it's billions, but it's just on paper.
That phrase, just on paper, is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
A lot.
It reminds us that these staggering valuations, they're a statement of belief in the future, not a statement of current realized profit.
Exactly. When a company is private, its valuation is basically an agreement. It's between the founders and a very small circle of specialized VC investors. It reflects what the last investor was willing to pay, and it's often based on these, super aggressive revenue projections that might be years away. It's not based on the verifiable profits that public markets demand.
So if the wealth is paper wealth, how stable is it, really? The sources immediately connect this feeling to the market memory of the dot-com crash.
And that connection is absolutely essential. The dot-com era showed us exactly what happens when market enthusiasm, in that case for the internet, just massively outpaces actual revenue and sustainable business models.
A lot of people were billionaires on paper back then.
Right up until the moment the public market decided the multiples were unsustainable.
And when that correction hit, all that monopoly money just vanished.
That's the perfect analogy. Until a company has a major liquidity event like a successful IPO or a big acquisition, that $10 billion valuation for Mercor is just a tool. It's for fundraising and for recruiting top talent.
It's highly volatile.
Extremely.
Yeah.
We're seeing valuations climb to $27 billion, while in many cases the companies are still optimizing for growth, not profitability. The sources are basically screaming at us to realize the risk is magnified when the sprint is this fast. There's less operational history to prove the model can survive a recession.
And there's another layer here too, isn't there? The experience factor. Does the fact that a 22-year-old is suddenly leading a company worth more than the GDP of some countries, does that increase the risk?
It certainly raises a really important question about stewardship and management maturity. Look, building a product quickly is one thing, but managing the legal complexity, the global regulations, the geopolitical stuff, the huge human infrastructure that comes with a $20 billion valuation, that's a completely different skill set.
Right.
These founders are essentially learning to run a global powerhouse while they're building it. The sources suggest this adds a whole new layer of potential fragility to these rapid valuations.
So the tension is clear. You've got immense instant wealth driven by genuine technological genius.
Right.
But it's immediately tempered by the hard lessons of the late 90s, demanding that we treat these numbers with extreme skepticism until they're actually realized.
And this movement isn't just about a few individual success stories. It's a systematic wave changing the very shape of the economy.
So let's talk about that systemic change. The sources frame this as the rise of the Gilded Age 2.0. If the Mercor team is sprinting, who exactly is leading this new pack?
Well, the material highlights a whole generation of under 30 founders taking over.
That's the core of it.
Yeah, and that term, Gilded Age 2.0, it's incredibly loaded, but it feels accurate because of the concentration of power, not just wealth.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
The original Gilded Age saw power consolidated through industrial monopolies. You had Carnegie in steel, Rockefeller in oil, Vanderbilt in railroads. These individuals amassed not just wealth, but crucially massive political and economic influence.
And now we're seeing the parallel. This time, the monopolies are built on data, on proprietary AI models, and software infrastructure. And it's creating a new, much younger elite.
But the difference in this Gilded Age 2.0 is the velocity, the sheer speed of the ascent. When a young founder gets a $10 billion valuation, they immediately gain influence over capital markets, over regulators, over global information flows. They're not just tech pioneers anymore. They're instantaneously global power brokers.
Well, that instantaneous leap from, startup founder in a garage to global power broker, that is the definition of Gilded Age 2.0.
Yes. The wealth is concentrated among a younger demographic than we've ever seen before, and that concentration has huge societal implications.
How so?
The sources are implicitly asking how quickly this new elite will use that power. Will the focus stay on pure innovation? Or will this power be used to shape laws, acquire competitors, and reinforce these digital monopolies? Much like the robber barons of the 19th century did with industrial infrastructure.
It changes everything. It changes what access to capital looks like, what the threshold for even being an economic player is. The capital is all flowing to those who can leverage these foundational AI models the fastest.
It's a fundamental power transfer happening faster than any other economic revolution in modern history. And it creates this chasm between the speed of the innovators and the speed of, well, everyone else. The regulators, the established industries trying to keep up.
The very definition of being well-informed changes when market cycles that used to take 10 years now play out in 10 months.
Exactly.
Which brings us right back to the central tension of this whole deep dive, doesn't it?
It does.
Are we inspired by the sheer ingenuity, the tech acceleration that lets a 22-year-old achieve this staggering scale? Or are we fundamentally terrified by the volatility and the unprecedented concentration of wealth and power in the hands of this new, incredibly young elite generation?
And based on the materials, the only honest answer is that we have to hold both of those feelings at the same time.
Right.
To only celebrate the sprint, you risk ignoring the structural fragility that speed creates. But to only fear the concentration risks missing what is probably the most significant technological leap of the last 20 years.
This has been a truly fascinating analysis. Let's make sure you walk away with the 3 critical takeaways from our source stack. First, the old speed to billionaire metric is definitively broken. The time it takes is now measured in quarters, not decades.
Second, the numbers prove this is systemic. You have Merkur at 10 billion, Perplexity at 20, Cursor at 27. These valuations show that new AI-driven monopolies are being built at hyperspeed, using cloud infrastructure and open-source models.
And third, and maybe most importantly, the historical context is non-negotiable. This wealth is often just on paper. The memory of the dot-com crash demands caution. These valuations are based on future potential, not guaranteed profit. That realization is the most important part of analyzing this new Gilded Age.
So we've established the pace is unprecedented and the founders are young. Now I want to leave you with a final provocative thought based on all this. If the pace of innovation continues to accelerate, meaning it gets even easier and even faster to launch a multi-billion-dollar startup, what does that do to the stability of today's massive valuations?
Wow.
If a small Merkur team can disrupt the incumbents today, what prevents the next 2-person team from disrupting a $27 billion company like Cursor in the next, say, 3 months?
So in the Gilded Age 2.0, the biggest threat to today's billion-dollar valuation might just be the speed of the next sprinter right behind it.
Precisely.
Something to mull over as the market just keeps getting faster. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.